Alrighty then. So Yakov does bring up a very good point because he's working on a couple of projects, but not every story is meant to be a franchise. Some stories are meant to be told and conclude satisfactorily. If you try to milk, sequels and spin-offs of those, it may not go well. However, that decision is each creator's to make, and every story is different. Just be sure you understand what the story you're trying to tell and where it can go or can't go once it's complete. Also, with spin-offs especially, it's a better idea in many cases to keep them far removed from the original story. You can utilize the setting in many ways without forcing every story in it to be closely linked. This makes the setting feel more alive and vast. You also don't run the risk of making an overcomplicated mess of continuity. Let the adventures of your characters end at the right time and allow them the ending they earned. Star Wars in particular, both old EU and Disney failed at this. Yeah, I'd have to agree because it can get convoluted. So, in my case, to tie this more into Uplift Protocol, yeah, I'll have the main sequence, and then some of the side stories I want to do, I'll do it as like one-shot books. Like stuff about what the Accord War, what Poppy and White House were doing during that. There's all sorts of things I can pop into and have different things, fleshed out and go into different directions. It's just that right now with Uplift Protocol, with the main sequence, I'm going towards a particular ending, and then I can expand some stuff out, later, and even some little anthologies to showcase like little character moments that could be considered, important depending on your point of view, but say they don't carry the main story forward much. When it comes to Uplift Protocol, I want to make sure the main sequence is just chugging right along, so that way I'm not stuck in making like 50 issue behemoth books. There are little things that I want to add later to these anthologies, and mostly I would say half of it's going to be like little character moments. The other half of it's going to be a little bit more of the, I guess you would want to say, a world building flavor. But for me, I just don't want to do like an overabundance of world building within the main sequence in terms of like extrapolation or all the exposition. That's why I leave a good chunk of the exposition in the actual quotes at the beginning of each chapter, just to help speed things along, and so I don't bog the reader or even bog myself down in like, okay, now we gotta segue into 20 pages of exposition to, like over here. And like the anthologies that I'm planning will showcase like little events in the setting that really wouldn't help propel the main story along. And a couple of the characters have enough of a backstory to where I can legitimately probably write a quick 200-page book about it. Which is the reason why I think even when it comes to my anthologies and one-shots, I'm probably going to group stuff together in, omnibuses again. Because I like omnibuses. I like having stuff all in one spot, or at least in a good chunk. Because I've noticed sometimes with certain releases, the writer will release their whole series as a set of like one book each, and then after they're done completing the series, they'll go back and like redo a collection, and then they'll re-release the collection. So sometimes I find myself waiting for the omnibus collections too, just because right now I'm the type of person that I want to see what like the whole chunk of the series might entail. For the most part, unless it's like a writer I know where I know I'm gonna enjoy their stuff and their wheelhouse overlaps enough with mine, then yeah, like usually the omnibus is the way I like tip them, and then I'll support directly through the single releases. It all just depends, but I've noticed like with my backlog of stuff, sometimes it's just easier to have it all. Okay, it's all in one spot. But sometimes even with my ebook collections, I have to make separate collections. Like, okay, wait, this is all this one series, and you can use your settings to basically tell other stories within that setting. That's just fine. In fact, even the setting I have is big enough to where, yeah, I'm gonna have the Bardaxian series. I'm probably going to try to make those as lean and mean as possible. Probably aiming for like 150 to 200 pages in each, mini book for that series. But again, all this stuff is still like I outline and put notes for it, but my overall main focus, as you guys can see, is completing the main series. I'll get that done first. It requires a little bit of discipline, but once you have a main trunk of a setting or a series with that story concluded, it's like, okay, then move on to the next project, and then move on to the next project. Try not to bog yourself down with too many projects all at once, because it's like, oh my goodness, you'll sidetrack yourself. You'll wreck yourself. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and I'm trying not to wreck myself, but that's the reason why I'm doing the series the way I'm doing it right now, is so as I'm learning how to do all this stuff, when I decide to go on to another setting or work on another set of books, maybe even in a different wheelhouse altogether, I'll have the skills needed to, like, okay, wham bam, thank you ma'am, get this thing done. Yes. But many of these side books or anthologies, even for Uplift Protocol that I have planned, yeah, there'll be some Easter eggs, there might be a cameo or two, but really, the way this society works in my setting, with Prologue, you can tell different stories about different characters for a while. Heck, I could even set some things back on Earth with a crew of light shamans doing investigations and things like that. Because the Arcane Order was doing a whole lot of stuff, and a certain Proctor Gansys was also dipping his toes into that. So that's the reason why the Muthra weren't left behind with certain things. And in fact, I could easily do a little one-shot or two-shot duology with Proctor Gansys. The guy has done some stuff in the background. There's a whole lot of characters that have been moving the chessboard around and doing different things. But overall, the main sequence of books is centered more around Eliza and her general family and friends, and how that's affecting, the overall main storyline right now. So that's why you could have all sorts of plot bunnies jumping around, but you have to learn how to corral them. Like bad plot bunnies. Get over there! No, bad bunny. Waking me up at 5 a.m. And as always, I'll feature yet another lovely art by Old Khan here. Yeah, the thing is like, I think as I get overall deeper into the series for the main sequence, some issues I think I'll make shorter, just so I can basically update people on what certain other kind of side arcs are developing. Because book 5, I would say at least half of it or so is going to have to do with getting the Typherian light shamans and their weave speakers out of that system, or at least being able to purge that system properly. And there's a few things that will help with that eventually. And also, when I envisioned certain things for Gwen, I was thinking, what did I enjoy about, Edmund's arc, where he was able to learn, aka from Narnia, like, what was he able to learn about making his big old derp mistake, and basically the weave through a Hail Mary at Gwen. It's like, oh, I gotta cut you off cold turkey, or you'll turn into one of those white owls, which, I describe them as white owls, but, basically, they're pretty creepy looking. I'm probably gonna have Old Khan draw one of them at some point. Again, I make notes as I go along, but for this instance, they're just overall really creepy. They're usually, most of them are kind of mishappen, but a handful of them are like basically the whole coldly beautiful kind of like eerie, like this is too perfect to be true kind of setup. But their eyes are gonna be super creepy, like all black, kind of like the lovely little keepers we got running around sometimes. Eh, but yeah, that most of them. I try to think of like when it comes down to some of the adversaries. I do have a light brush when I describe them because I want people to be able to kind of envision something really horrific, but you don't have to always, basically pile on the description. Personally, that's just not the way I do things. But when I do go back to edit things later and maybe add a few things, subtract, that sort of thing, I might add in a little bit more description on certain setups, or at least a little bit of repeat description, because my whole thing is when I first introduce a character, that's when I'll describe them a little bit. But later on, I won't really go into a lot of physical description with characters because I assume that I've already set up what the physicality or the general looks of the character is from the get-go. And that's just my whole little writing tidbit. Honestly, the more I look at the old pulps, even they didn't usually describe a whole lot of things in tons of detail. What they did is they tried to basically parse it down to where they got a good amount of description within a few sentences. That's all I'm really trying to do. Have a good day, everybody.